Chapter 2. Its Practical Result. Having thus very briefly examined the four rights and the moral basis of secularism, we pursue our inquiries further and are told by Mr. Holyoake that there is a great practical issue which gives body and worth to the mass of theory. We confess it is pleasant to learn that practical benefit will occur from any belief, speculation, or controversy. We hear the advocate of secularism stating with emphasis that its practical result is the discovery that science is the providence of man. Our readers will allow that this is a short answer to a profound problem, but is not shortness the main qualification of the reply? Does it touch the real question in debate? Is the panting heart assuaged and satisfied by the blunt response? We must here, as before, call upon the secularists to define their terms. What mean they by science? What idea do they attach to the term providence? How does man bring science and providence to bear upon himself? In seeking an answer to the question, what is science? We may possibly be told that it implies a knowledge of the laws of nature in the first instance, and then a practical working out of those laws said laws in the common concerns of life and time. Will secularists answer this question? Does not law imply the existence of a lawgiver? If so, is not the giver greater than the thing given? Is not the maker greater than the thing made? Whatever course may be taken in answering this inquiry, we put it to the common sense of our readers to say whether, in talking about the laws of England, they do not proceed on the supposition that there are legislators who appoint, modify, or annul the laws which govern the country. Whoever heard of lawmaking itself? It is easy to resolve everything into law, but if law implies a lawgiver, it is evident that law cannot be the final source of appeal. We submit further that in discarding the idea of a lawgiver, the secularists quench the glory and efface the beautiness of their idle nature. To us, the universe is reft of its splendors, and its music is silenced, if the life behind be ignored. But when the great personal He is spoken of as being the kindler of the sun, the sustainer of the heavens, and the monarch of all being, it is then that gushing song and dazzling brilliance, pregnant life and a blooming immortality, thrill and glorify the universal creation. But further, if law be self-existent and eternal in theology, how comes it that law in every other department of inquiry rests on a different basis and reflects the mind while it involves the character of the legislator? If reason is consistent with itself, it must recognize the consistency of our statement with the current of history and fact, as well as of judgment and consciousness, that law in religion and law in politics claim paternity somewhere in the universe. In whatever aspect we view this question, we find ourselves dissatisfied until we repose on the assurance that all law is under the beneficent control of an eternal God. True, we may not be able to answer every inquiry concerning His nature or His modus extendi, yet if we take one step backward or in any direction from this conclusion, we are plunged into darkness visible. Hence, on this low ground, our testimony of reason, judgment, and consciousness is that the balance of difficulty is altogether on the side of skepticism. We thus allow, with all cordiality, that there are insoluble difficulties about the Christian argument, but much as we may be perplexed with these, we are thrown into the deepest dungeon of despair in turning to any other hypothesis, doctrine, or creed. The secularists seem to proceed on the assumption that Christianity opposes science, than which nothing can be more at variance with the truth. When the geologists threatened to overwhelm the Mosaic history, Christianity calmly awaited the result of his investigations, and is at this hour hearing from the primary, secondary, and tertiary battlements of the earth her own praises uttered, and still she courts examination, knowing that every fossil will testify to her truth and that every rock is inscribed with her name. When astronomy threatened, from starry heights, to quench the radiance of the Sun of Righteousness, Christianity patiently demanded the completion of the trial, the result of which, so far as ascertained, has been that all suns and systems, all comets and stars, in their fiery splendor, are forever singing as they shine, "The hand that made us is divine." Christianity is the greatest friend to all true science, all sound philosophy. It's readily admitted the providence will not do for man what man might do for himself. Providence has placed at our disposal certain instrumentalities for the right use of which we are accountable, and for the abuse of which we must suffer punishment. Science itself is one of the gifts of providence. Whatever man may have been able to accomplish, he has drawn his skill from a source higher than himself. He has been sustained by a power allied to omnipotence. Let not the secularists vauntingly talk of science as though they were its only patrons, and as though Christians derided its triumphs. If they do so, it is evident that they are speaking from malignity on the one hand, or ignorance on the other. The history of science speaks in loudest tones concerning the valuable labors of Christian students in all its diversified departments. We have already intimated that God will not do for man what man can do for himself. If a man thrust his hand into the fire, he will be burnt. If he plunge into the water, he must be drowned. God will not miraculously interpose in behalf of the man who wantonly and knowingly violates the laws of nature. So far, the secularist professes to agree with us, but states the question in a different form, viz., if a man be thrown into the fire, will God deliver him? If he be plunged into the water by the homicide or the oppressor, will special providence rescue him? In this altered form, we cannot see much that contravenes the doctrine of divine providence. It is perhaps more plausible than profound. At all events, the most cursory reader of the Bible knows that God has interposed for his children who have been thrown into the furnace. He has enabled believers to quench the violence of fire, and has made them more than conquerors by the inspiration of a holy energy and immortal hope. But, laying those instances apart entirely, we don't know that deliverance would have been the highest triumph of divine graciousness. It strikes us there is something higher than this. We must submit, for example, that in the case of Stephen, it was infinitely greater proof of godly assistance to enable the expiring martyr to breathe forgiveness than had omnipotence conducted him safely to his home. To the gross-minded, there would indeed have been in the latter case that which is so much wished, viz., an ocular manifestation of superhuman aid. But to the ear of the Christian, there was in Stephen's dying prayer a holier melody than the music of the spheres of a nobler instance of forgiving love than an angelic tongue could express. Man is not to dictate in what precise manner God is to give proof of his providential reign. Man has his own province in that he may rise to eminence and usefulness, but when he attempts to grasp the divine prerogative and to purloin the crown of deity, he either rushes into the extremes of insanity or sinks into contempt as fierce and endless as it is deserved. But turn the question upon the secularists themselves. If a man be thrown into the fire, will science save him? If so, tell us what science. Will chemistry deliver him? Will mathematics save the victim? Will botany, geology, or astronomy stretch forth an assisting hand? Answer, philosophic secularist. Here, however, we may be chided for levity, if not rebuked for impertinence. We are gravely told that a human helper made his appearance just at the time, and effected a deliverance for the burning man. Aye, but tell us, gentle secularist, what induced the human helper to be there just at the crisis? Was it chance? If so, then how could it be science? If science brought the human helper there, then explain to us how it operated upon his mind in order to effect his presence at the scene of danger. If you reply that it is beyond the power of reason to account for the fact, then it is plain that, after all, You believe sometimes, even when reason does not explain the cause or reveal the process. If you ask us why God does not deliver every victim from persecution the same way that he rescued the 3 Hebrew children the days of Nebuchadnezzar, it is easy to turn around upon you and ask if science ever delivered one victim. What's the reason it has not delivered all victims? What has science been doing to allow so many shipwrecks, explosions, collisions, and divers other disasters? On the Christian principle, we believe that all things work together for good, to the trustful and obedient child of God, that although there may be clouds and darkness around the process, yet the result will glorify God and enshrine pious humanity in universal blessedness. We wish the secularists to tell us whether any man has been delivered from danger by the intervention of science. If so, will they also explain how the man became acquainted with science? What were the circumstances attending his rescue? How did the helper come? How did the idea occur to his mind of rendering assistance? We persuade ourselves that when these questions are fully answered, when the hidden history is brought to light, that secularism, bold as it is its front, will stand abashed at the revelation of a supreme and benevolent providence. We believe that God assists humanity by quickening of mind, the suggestion of thought, as well as by the tangible gift or visible aid. If God shows a man how he is to deliver himself, God is then the deliverer. If he teaches his child resignation, he is then the God of providence and sustaining love. No man of sound mind professes to not deny that science has done much for man. But because a child has done much for himself, we cannot conclude that, therefore, there is no parent and never was one. We are told by the secularists that science is independent of every form of theological faith. Well, what then? Whoever professed to show that science and systems of theology were connected? The secularist is here confounding things that differ. If he imagines that Christianity teaches the unity of the two, we have already affirmed that we are not contending for any of the logical forms of Christian truth, but for the whole theology revealed and enforced in the New Testament, and from the position, we shall not shrink. We have not sought to teach the Christian doctrine of divine providence, but have contented ourselves with replying briefly to the representation of secularism on this important subject. So often we have watched its wondrous developments in our experience that we shudder at the thought of its rejection by others. We've repeated recourse to science, but only as an instrumentality. We've reaped benefits, great and numerous, from scientific discovery, but we rejoice in the reflection that a paternal hand had provided the agency which man has detected and given man the mental and physical might requisite to their full development. We look upon science as the handmaid of religion. Every star discovered by the former is a gem in the diadem of the latter. Every flight taken on the pinions of science is welcomed to higher altitudes by the reigning presence of divine truth. Christianity forbids not the cultivation of true science. It supplies vital stimulus to the mind of the earnest student. It gives purpose and stability to the profoundest research. While our own experience continues to speak so loudly in favor of providence, and our observation sees the simple yet sublime connection between religion and science, we dare not rush into the fastness of scepticism or delude ourselves with the vagaries of a capricious and senseless chance.